This conversation is brought to you by Modular, the payments automation platform. Hello, I'm Lily Gooden. Welcome to the Future of Utilities podcast. We are now joined by somebody very special. We're going to talk about NESO's power responsive program and how flexibility could be our superpower. And we have a great guest, Jonathan Wisdom from NESO. Great to have you with us. First of all, tell us who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Lindley. Really pleased to be here with you all today. So my name is Jonathan Wisdom, or John, so really happy for that as well.
Perfect.
This afternoon as we keep chatting. I look after the development and delivery of our balancing services at NESO, which is how parties participate in our markets. And NESO is the National Energy System Operator. So we're the company that today we keep the lights on, we operate the electricity system, but we also plan tomorrow's energy system. And that means that everything wants to work holistically, and we want to keep our hands around that holistically to make that work. And flexibility is a really important part of that. And we want to make sure that consumers have the opportunity to participate across our energy system and be really involved. So really looking forward to this conversation. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, let's start with flexibility because it is the word of the moment, really. Energy security sort of starts at home in many ways. Flexibility is very important. So if you just describe the Power Responsive program, what's it about, what's the mission, and why?
Absolutely. So Power Responsive has been within NESO for a while.
Yeah.
It probably came to fruition, to life around about 10 or 11 years ago, and it's very much about engaging the market and understanding what demand-side participation could look like.
Yeah.
NESO knows that it has a role as this whole system entity to drive flexibility and encourage its participation as much as possible in all of our products. What that means in practice for Power Responsive is that we worked with Ofgem and the government last year to really focus on, well, how can Power Responsive evolve and change to drive forward these actions that we need to take?
Yeah.
And so Power Responsive now has evolved into an entity that is now engaging directly with consumers, helping them bring their flexibility to market and being able to participate in the energy system like never before.
I mean, what's the purpose? The purpose that we're hearing a lot of today is to be able to stabilize our demand for energy. I suppose that's very much part of it, is to be able to work, yes, with consumers, but also with suppliers to make sure that that two-way flow of energy is healthier, particularly in times where a lot of energy is needed.
Absolutely. So NESO, as the system operator, has a need to access these resources to enable us to operate that system. And as you say, keep that supply and demand in balance all the time. That's where flexibility can be really helpful and useful. We're no longer in a world where we have large centralised loads providing all of our generation. We're in a world where decentralised loads need to come and participate in our energy system like they haven't done before. And Power Responsive is there to help consumers do that, to help consumers understand how to engage with suppliers and aggregators, to understand the capacity and the capability of what they have to offer us flexibility.
Yeah. Somebody looking at this from the outside and looking at the website and understanding what Power Responsive is in headline value only might think, okay, it's the big energy suppliers and it's not really involving me. Maybe you're a smaller partner. But who do you want to bring to the table? Who do you want this conversation to be with? Who needs to speak and who do we need to listen to?
It's a great question. So across the energy system, we're moving to a world where consumers are not just taking energy from the network. They're able to change their behaviour, and the way the system has changed recently, and certainly the introduction of new rules and regulations to the system, means that actually that changing of behaviour can be reflected to them in value. Right. So your question about who this is for, it can be for anybody. Yeah. We are really wanting to work closely with domestic users through suppliers and aggregators, but particularly through industrial and commercial actors who may have a want to understand their energy use better and therefore how they can offer that, but also who may want to understand how their loads can be used to bring that flexibility through and how they can understand the value that represents to them and their organisations.
This conversation is brought to you by Modular, the payments automation platform. And Modular automates how money moves, delivering the efficiency, the accuracy and the reliability that your finance operations need to scale. This is slightly off the piste, but we are living in a cost of living crisis that involves domestic customers. Also, it's a cost of business crisis in many ways as well. So this is about businesses who are desperate to have, yes, cost reduced, but also to have a really stable relationship with their utility suppliers. And I suppose that's part of the conversation too, isn't it? To make sure we look at the world around us in a wider sense. What, that's coming through a lot at the summit this year, is that we need to have conversations even outside our industry.
Absolutely, and energy and the cost of energy is a challenge for households and businesses alike. The way that we can approach that with businesses to help them understand, well, actually, yes, there's a gross cost of energy and there's a demand process that has to be met because that demand is satisfying their core business process. But can we build on that and help consumers understand what value there is beyond just that demand process that they're used to doing, and how they can take advantage of that?
Let's bring it into the real world and down from policy level for a minute. Any examples that you can think of that where this relationship is starting to build and that you're starting to see, really nice conversations happening? Because, when it comes down to it, one individual case can actually illustrate the entire process. So what sort of thing are you seeing?
So we've through the start of this work with Power Responsive, going out and engaging with parties, we really focus firstly on, can we build that awareness, and can we generate that awareness through the events and through the engagement that we have. That engagement is our key way in to understanding these consumers and their loads and their ways of working, because obviously as NESO we don't have that natural customer relationship with these particular types of users, so we want to get out to come to places like Future of Utilities and others to understand how we can generate that and how we can turn that around. So my team have been out and talking with many different types of consumers. We've recently seen lots of interest from cold storage, from supermarkets, from EV fleets, for example, who all understand that this can be a real benefit to their business and their ways of working.
I suppose in some ways, and I run a business, we're kind of blinded by our own challenges, and so it's difficult to see further afield. So we need a translation piece here. We need somebody like yourself to come through and your team to come through and say, okay, here's what we're doing. I didn't know this. This is good information. So actually having that information flow can really help with this progression into a smarter, smoother supply. Yes,
absolutely. And you'll never hear me disagree with the idea that there is complexity in our market and our industry. There is significant complexity in our market and industry. What we're trying to do through Power Responsive is to take some of that complexity and that challenge away, to make this a much more possible way of engaging in this market that we all participate in every day. Everyone is using energy every day, but how do we make this something that is active and encouraged for parties to understand the value to them? That's really, really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. There is going to be, and I'm sure you found this, there is a barrier to break through with individual consumers and business owners like myself, and trying to convince them that they are part of this conversation. Also, it can be a bit painful to talk about energy prices at the moment. It can be. So how do I, somebody like me, get involved? What would you say to people like myself, or even larger businesses who are, who need to be part of this conversation, to get involved, to be part of it?
I think a few things. So the first thing I would say is we take this extremely seriously. This is a core part of NESO's mission and role and purpose and vision, to deliver a growth in flexibility and a growth in these markets that inevitably help us manage the system, but also provide that value through. So the first thing I would say is we are behind this. This isn't something temporary. This is something we believe in and something we want to see developed and pushed forward. You can see that in the work we do. So we have our Power Responsive function that is taking this forward. We have 2 other programs within NESO that are focused on enabling demand-side flexibility. So what are all of those barriers across the industry that might interfere with the people's ability to participate? And then secondly, our routes to market. So for all of the individual products that we may have, which again, I appreciate may look a bit daunting and complex from the outside, how do we make those as easy to interact with us and as easy to understand and work with as possible? Like I said before, I know consumers, they have a business. They need to run and understand that business. We want to make their participation in providing that flexibility as easy as possible in a way that can take account of that business that they have to run.
Final thing to our audience here at the Future of Utilities Summit, you're all either involved or running businesses. You may be in energy supply. Hands up if you'd like to have a healthier conversation with your consumers, and maybe even with NESO and other people through the network. Hands up if you'd like to have a healthier conversation. Yeah, so we've got about 60%. Some are very satisfied, John. Some are
Yes.
but that's an important thing, isn't it? Because that's a majority of people. Yes, a very small straw poll,
Yeah.
but this is your audience. So I guess from now on, it's a case of just getting out there and continuing to have this conversation. Because what's the end point for you? What's the goal from Power Responsive? What would you like to see?
So we've identified that there are opportunities across the sector for all sorts of demand to participate.
Yeah.
We, at the end of last year, published some targets that we've given ourselves to say, well, how can we really run at this and develop this and grow this successfully? We think we've got around 200 megawatts plus of participation right now. We want to grow that to around 950 megawatts, right. Even a gigawatt of flexibility participate in this market by 2030. Yeah. That's our goal, that's how seriously we take it, and that's where we're aiming for.
And what will that give you? What will that tell you about I mean, I guess it'll be data and feedback and stories and so on.
Yes, absolutely. But it'll also continue to prove, because I wouldn't say prove as of now, because I think it's there and it's participated, but continue to prove how important flexibility is for our whole system and how much we need to understand that as the National Energy System Operator moving forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. Nice to have you with us. Thanks for all the honesty. It's always very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice.
And that's it for now from the Future of Utilities podcast. Great to have you with us too. Thanks a lot. Take care.